My name is Emily Carter. I'm 28 years old, and until last week, I thought my life was finally falling into place. I had a stable job as a marketing coordinator at a small tech firm, a cozy apartment in Denver, and the man I loved, my fiancé, Ryan Mitchell. We'd been together for 3 years, and we were just 6 months away from saying I do. But everything came crashing down with a single text message. It was a Thursday evening. I was in the kitchen, making dinner, when Ryan showed up at my door, pale, cold, and distant. He didn't kiss me hello. He didn't even step inside. He just held up his phone and said, "I got your message." Confused, I took his phone from him. The screen showed a text from my number. "I can't do this anymore. Please don't contact me again." My stomach dropped. "I didn't send this," I whispered, my heart pounding. Ryan's face was unreadable. "Emily, it came from your number." I tried calling my phone from his, panicked, but my phone was sitting on the counter, untouched. Someone had done this deliberately. And then a thought hit me so hard I felt dizzy. My sister, Claire, had borrowed my phone earlier that day. My hands trembled as I pieced it together. Claire had been acting weird all week, making snide jokes about Ryan and me, saying we were too perfect. This wasn't a random prank. This was sabotage. That night, sitting alone after Ryan left, I knew something inside me had cracked. This wasn't just a bad day. This was the moment everything would change. Growing up with my sister Claire Carter was like living in two completely different worlds. I was always the responsible one, the quiet achiever who tried to keep everyone happy. Claire, on the other hand, seemed to glide through life effortlessly, charming, persuasive, and always the center of attention. Our parents, Margaret and Stephen Carter, had their favorites, though they'd never admit it outright. Mom adored Claire's outgoing personality, constantly praising her in front of teachers, relatives, and even me. "Claire has such a spark, Emily," Mom would say, her words dripping with comparison, even when I had just won an academic award. Dad was distant most of the time, busy with his own work, rarely noticing the quiet sacrifices I made, staying up late to help Claire with homework, covering for her mistakes, or listening to her vent while she ignored my feelings. I remember one birthday in particular. I had spent weeks saving up to buy Claire the perfect gift, a vintage necklace she'd been admiring in a store window. She opened it in front of everyone, smiled politely, and then tossed it aside when she got a new phone that day. Mom barely noticed my disappointment and instead told me to cheer up. It's the thought that counts. Even as a child, I learned to keep my emotions hidden. Any hint of frustration or jealousy was met with criticism. Claire, meanwhile, could manipulate situations effortlessly. If she wanted something, she cried, pouted, or twisted the truth, and suddenly everyone was on her side. I tried to fight it, tried to speak up, but the message was always clear. I was second, always second. This favoritism shaped me in ways I didn't fully understand until now. I became cautious, self-sacrificing, always aware that my happiness came second to someone else's convenience or desire. Looking back, I realized the pattern was the same with Ryan. Claire's jealousy, subtle at first, grew with every milestone in my life. And now, with that fake breakup text, all those childhood lessons of being overshadowed and betrayed had culminated in the worst possible moment. After the initial shock of the fake breakup text, I tried to focus on fixing things with Ryan. I spent hours calling him, texting him, even showing him security footage from my apartment to prove I hadn't left the text. But no matter what I did, Ryan's eyes carried doubt. I could see it in the hesitation in his tone, the way he avoided looking at me directly. Meanwhile, Claire's behavior was maddeningly subtle. She smiled too sweetly when I mentioned the text, feigned concern, and even suggested I give Ryan some space. I wanted to scream, but part of me still hoped she was joking, that she hadn't actually done something so cruel. I reminded myself that she had been my sister all my life, my family. Surely she wouldn't cross this line. But the signs were all there. The night before the text, I had stayed up late finishing last-minute wedding preparations. I had stayed awake until 3 a.m., wrapping gifts, coordinating with vendors, and managing the guest list. Claire had spent the night in her room, scrolling on her phone, making no effort to help, yet she had somehow orchestrated the betrayal without anyone noticing. Every interaction became a minefield. If I mentioned my suspicion, Claire's eyes would widen in shock, and Mom would subtly intervene. "Don't make accusations, Emily." Even Ryan, who wanted to believe in me, sometimes looked uneasy. I felt trapped, isolated in a room filled with people, yet utterly alone. The tension escalated over the next few days. Invitations were prepared, flowers ordered, and my wedding planning turned into a nightmare. Claire made subtle comments about Ryan. "Are you sure he's the right one for you?" Planting seeds of doubt. She whispered to our friends, "Maybe Emily isn't ready for marriage," creating a network of silent sabotage. And through it all, I kept hoping for a moment of clarity, some proof that this was a mistake, that my sister wouldn't really betray me. But deep down, my gut screamed the truth. Someone close to me, someone I trusted completely, had decided my happiness wasn't important. That tension, that gnawing suspicion, grew with each passing day. I could feel the walls closing in, the weight of betrayal pressing on my chest. It wasn't just about a text anymore. It was about years of being overshadowed, disregarded, and finally, being hurt by the person I should have been able to trust most. It all came to a head one evening when Ryan came over after work. I had spent the whole day rehearsing what I would say, trying to stay calm. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I explained everything clearly, he would finally see the truth. But the moment he stepped into my apartment, I knew it wouldn't be that simple. His jaw was tight, his eyes wary, and his body language screamed distance. He barely looked at me as he said, "Emily, we need to talk." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "Ryan, please. I didn't send that text. You have to believe me." He hesitated. "It's hard not to. Emily, it came from your number. How am I supposed to ignore that?" Before I could respond, Claire walked in, holding a tray of cookies, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Are you two fighting again?" "I hate seeing you so stressed, Emily." Something inside me snapped. I turned toward her, my hands trembling. "Claire, did you send that text?" Her eyes widened in mock innocence. "What? No. How could you even think that?" Mom suddenly appeared in the doorway, frowning. "Emily, stop accusing your sister. You're overreacting." I felt the walls close in. Betrayal, anger, and heartbreak collided in my chest. I realized then that I had no allies in this room. My sister had manipulated everything, and my parents, as usual, took her side without question. Ryan looked torn, caught between doubt and love. The words that escaped my mouth were harsh, trembling but firm. "I can't do this. I can't be in a life where I'm constantly doubted, undermined, and betrayed by the people I love most." I grabbed my coat and keys. The door slammed behind me with a force that echoed my heartbreak. I didn't look back. The apartment, the engagement, the life I thought I had, all of it stayed behind in that moment. Walking into the cold night air, I felt an unfamiliar mixture of despair and liberation. Something had broken inside me, yes, but for the first time, I realized I had the power to take control of what came next. That night, as I sat alone in my car, I made a decision that would change everything. I couldn't stay in Denver, couldn't face the constant reminders of betrayal and broken trust. I needed to vanish, not just from my family, but from the life that had made me feel small for far too long. The next few days were a blur. I sold most of my belongings, packed only what I truly needed, and quietly resigned from my job. I didn't call Claire or my parents. There were no dramatic goodbyes, just the silent determination to reclaim my life. I moved to Portland, renting a small apartment with paint-smudged walls and creaky floors, far enough that no one would casually show up. I found work at a local cafe, bartending in the evenings while taking marketing freelance projects during the day. The hours were long, and the work wasn't glamorous, but for the first time, every effort I put in was mine, no one else's approval required. I also started to rebuild my social life. I met Sophia, a kind-hearted barista who had left a toxic family behind herself, and Liam, a freelance photographer who appreciated the little joys in life. Slowly, I realized that trust and love could exist outside the confines of family expectations. At first, the nights were the hardest. Memories of Ryan and Claire haunted me, and the ache of what I lost pressed on my chest. But each day, the pain dulled slightly. I celebrated small victories: a perfect latte poured, a compliment on a project, a walk through the rain-soaked streets of Portland. I began to see the truth. Happiness wasn't about having a perfect life, a perfect family, or even a perfect fiancé. It was about being true to myself. For the first time in my life, I wasn't performing for anyone else's approval. I wasn't constantly comparing my worth to someone else's spotlight. Months passed, and with each passing day, I felt lighter, stronger. The betrayal that had once shattered me became a lesson in resilience. I realized that disappearing didn't mean running away in fear. It meant reclaiming my freedom, my dignity, and my peace. For the first time, I could breathe without guilt, without fear, and without the shadow of Claire looming over me. I was finally choosing me. It didn't take long for my old life to start creeping back, but this time, I was prepared. First, it was subtle messages. My parents would call once or twice a week, always with a concerned tone. "Emily, we just want to talk. Things got out of hand. Come home for dinner." I didn't answer. Then came emails, flowers left at my apartment with notes like, "We're worried about you, sweetie. Please don't push us away." I almost cried at first, missing the family I had hoped would support me, but I reminded myself that this was manipulation, not love. Claire's attempts were even more infuriating. She sent private messages pretending to apologize. "I'm so sorry, Emily. I didn't mean for things to get this far. Can we talk?" I read the messages once, feeling the familiar sting of betrayal, and then deleted them. I realized her words weren't about regret. They were about control. Then came the emotional pressure from my parents. Mom called sobbing one night, claiming she wasn't well and that she needed me home. Dad sent texts about the house, the family, subtly implying guilt if I didn't respond. For a moment, I wavered. I wanted to rush back, to comfort them, to be the daughter they always said they wanted. But something had changed inside me. I could see through the manipulation now. I was no longer the girl who would bend herself into knots for approval. I had built a life for myself, small, imperfect, but real. I refused to let guilt, fear, or Claire's toxic games drag me back into a life where I was constantly undervalued. I spoke to Sophia and Liam about it, and their support gave me strength. They reminded me that love and family weren't always about blood. I could choose who I allowed in my life. And for the first time, I truly understood what it meant to protect my peace. By the end of that month, the calls slowed, the flowers stopped arriving, and the tension that had followed me for so long began to fade. I was finally untethered from the toxic gravity of my old life, free to breathe, to love, and to live on my own terms. Sitting on the balcony of my small Portland apartment, watching the city lights flicker against the night sky, I finally felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the lies, they were all behind me now. And yet, they had left an unexpected gift: clarity. I realized that leaving wasn't about punishing anyone, not Claire, not my parents, not even Ryan. It was about survival. I had survived being overshadowed, dismissed, and manipulated for decades, and now I was thriving because I chose myself. The life I had built was quiet, imperfect, and wholly mine. My days were filled with meaningful work, laughter with friends who truly cared, and a sense of freedom I never thought I could experience. The constant fear of being doubted or undermined no longer existed. I could be vulnerable, I could fail, and I could grow, all on my own terms. And the lessons were clear. Family isn't measured by blood alone. It's measured by love, respect, and support. Betrayal from those closest you can feel like the end of the world, but it can also be the beginning of your true life, if you have the courage to walk away. I no longer felt guilty for putting myself first. I understood that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. Protecting your peace, your dignity, and your happiness is a responsibility, not a luxury. As I sipped my coffee that morning, sunlight spilling over the balcony, I smiled. I had lost much, yes, but I had also gained something far more valuable, a life free from manipulation, filled with self-respect, and surrounded by people who truly mattered. I whispered to myself, almost like a mantra. Family is proven by love, not just blood. Choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. And for the first time in my life, I truly believed it.